Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we're continuing our ongoing coverage of the world in conflict, the ongoing war between the Russian Federation, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, its Ukrainian proxies. At the same time, we're going to have a look at other events that are also shaping conflicts around the world. Now, make no mistake, as we speak, the armed forces of the Russian Federation are crushing the Ukrainian military. The Donbass offensive is incredibly successful and continues to be successful. At the same time, the Russians are massing more than 50,000 troops in Kursk Oblast to end the Kursk incursion. Now, obviously, the election took place. Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States of America, barring some sort of intervention from the deep state, which is very possible. Now, President Trump will be taking over one of the worst, if not the worst, foreign policy failures in U.S. history. The world is on the brink of world war. And it's hardly talked about in the mainstream media here in the U.S. It just doesn't happen. Not realistically. And one of the big issues, the uninformed urbanite. Ignorance is bliss. The uninformed urbanite. Now, there are two trains of thought right now in the foreign policy establishment of the United States regarding China and Russia. And obviously, this is the most important foreign policy challenge right now for the United States, beyond a shadow of a doubt. Now, those two trains of thought are as follows. One, the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China are two separate challenges that operate within the same sphere. Second is that the Russian Federation and China are conjoined challenges. They have accepted that there is a unitary threat that exists in this, what has become, in many cases forced to become, this Russo-China alliance. That is not an option, even though it has become an accepted option for policy thinkers here in the United States. That is, again, a conjoined challenge. The U.S. accepts that the People's Republic of China and the Russian Federation are actively unified in an alliance against the United States and must treat each one of these adversaries the same. When you deal with one, it is the same as dealing with the other. That is a recipe for disaster. Hands down. It is a recipe for disaster. If the United States, through a self-fulfilling prophecy, pushes this alliance together, this conjoined alliance of the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China, and treats both of these nation states the same, it will lead to absolute disaster. You are creating a military alliance, the largest military alliance that has ever been seen on Earth in terms of modern capacity. It would be very much like going back in time and having Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union to ally together. What would have happened in World War II if the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany would have become allies against the West? Well, the war would have ended differently. I guarantee you. Absolutely differently. The world would not look the same. Now, fast forward to where we're at now. I promise you that by creating a Russo-Chinese military alliance that in the worst case scenario would involve a global war between the allied nations of the People's Republic of China and the Russian Federation against the United States and some other European nations and possibly some other Asian nations as well, there is a high probability that if that conflict were to take place, the United States would be militarily defeated. You are dealing with the largest country on the planet Earth, combined with a very large country that is the size of the United States and China, but with a population of well over 1 billion souls. Again, those billion souls joining with the largest country on Earth in terms of landmass. And on top of that, the Russians have an incredibly capable military industrial capacity. So accepting that Russia and China are the same, they are adversaries, and they must be treated equally as adversaries, we, the United States, are inherently creating a super military alliance against ourselves. That's a fact. Now, how do you combat this? How do you prevent the Russian Federation from uniting in a military alliance with the People's Republic of China? If you accept that a super alliance, a super military alliance that would inherently bring in other nation states, not just Russia and China together, you would see North Korea, Iran, Venezuela, most likely South Africa, a host of other nation states that would gravitate towards this super military alliance. How do you prevent that? And the answer to that is what is happening right now in the Ukraine. By propping up the Ukrainian military against the Russian Federation, you are pushing Russia towards China. By pushing and expanding NATO east, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Finland, Romania, even the possibility of Georgia, has been talked about. And most importantly, the Russian red line, the Ukraine, the borderlands. When you do this, you are pushing the Russian Federation into the sphere of the Chinese-Russo military alliance. And look, there are reasons, and there are very good reasons, why it will not be in Russia's best interest to ally itself with China, at least now. As the Chinese population expands, as more and more Chinese move into eastern Siberia, central Siberia, for work opportunities because of the growing population exceeding 1.4, 1.5 billion souls eventually, the population of Han Chinese in the Russian Federation at one point may exceed the population of Russian speakers in Siberia. The Chinese have talked about, there has been discussions that eventually Siberia could be part of the People's Republic of China. Now, that's not going to happen next year. It's not going to happen 10 years from now. But it is a possibility. It is a threat that the Russian Federation has to account for. But again, this super alliance that is being created as Donald Trump moves into the White House, he is facing this super alliance that has been created by the neoliberal establishment. Incredibly unwise, a strategic blunder of epic scale. China, Taiwan. I think this needs to be talked about. China, Taiwan. Should Taiwan be independent? Well, it is independent. It is a de facto independent state, beyond a shadow of a doubt. Now, the question that I have is as follows. Does Taiwan want to remain an independent state? Why do we ask that question? Well, we have to look at military capacity. We have to look at the soul of the country. Do the Taiwanese want to remain independent? The answer to that question, from the position I set, is that right now they are not fully vested. They, the Taiwanese, the Republic of China, is not fully vested in its own self-defense. And that's important. If a nation state does not want to remain free, and 100 miles to the west is the People's Republic of China, and you are not doing all you can in terms of defense capacity to remain free, then in all probability you will not remain free, and it should not be the responsibility of the United States to then come to the aid of Taiwan. Why do I say that? The GDP of Taiwan is $1.8 trillion. It is the 20th largest economy on the planet Earth. It spends about $20 billion on defense, about 2.6% of that GDP. Now let's compare and contrast. Let's compare and contrast a nation state such as Israel. Israel has a GDP of about $600 billion, nearly a third of the GDP of Taiwan. Yet Israel spends 5% plus of its GDP on national defense, about $25 billion. Israel, with a $600 billion economy, spends $25 billion on defense. Taiwan, again, $1.6 trillion, spends $20 billion. Look, if Taiwan was fully vested in its independence, which it is an independent nation state, that defense budget would probably look more like $40 billion instead of $20 billion. Taiwan would have a defense budget on par with a Western European nation state. And it could. It just chooses not to. If you look at its armed forces, if you look at the way it has recently, up until recently, conscripted service personnel, very short period of national service for these conscripted soldiers into the Taiwan military. On top of that, the training and esprit de corps appears to be not very high. Now that's changing. But that should have never occurred. If you want to remain free, if you want to be a free nation, you have to build your military. You cannot just sit there and spend 2% while 100 miles to the west you have a 2 million person armed forces that spends $250 billion on its own national defense. That is telling you that you are actually part of us, and eventually we are going to come for you. Think about that for a second. Think about that. You have a country in the People's Republic of China that sits 100 miles off the coast of Taiwan with 1.4 billion people, or whatever it is now, that is saying outright, you are part of us and we are eventually going to come for you. And all signs point to the fact that the People's Republic of China is preparing for that. So before the United States commits to defending Taiwan, Taiwan has to commit to defending itself. It has to at least have the perception that it would be a very, very difficult nut to crack for the Chinese. And when your main battle tank fleet, look, Taiwan has hundreds upon hundreds of main battle tanks that it can use to defend its island nation. With those main battle tanks that Taiwan has, this industrial nation, those tanks are from the 1970s and in some cases the 1950s. Obviously, they've been upgraded. That is not what a prosperous nation that has a $1.6 trillion economy that wants to remain free does. Taiwan is going to have to spend vastly more money to defend itself if it wants to remain free. It just is. It is going to have to accept the fact that it is probably going to need to spend 5%. And I don't know if it's too late. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I still think, as of right now, the PRC would have an incredibly difficult time conducting an invasion of the island nation of Taiwan. It could probably besiege it. It could blockade it. But moving enough troops and equipment on this defended island and taking control of the island, I think would be a very, very difficult proposition that has a high rate of failing. And that's why the Chinese have not moved yet. But Taiwan is not doing all it could do to defend itself. And yes, there are reasons, there are strategic implications for the United States if China takes control of Taiwan. And I think most people fully understand what that is. That's step one. Taiwan needs to do step one before the United States can proclaim that, yes, we will come to your defense. You have to defend yourself first. They're not doing that, and they need to do it. But back to the ongoing war between the Russian Federation, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and its Ukrainian proxy forces. All eyes right now, again, continue to be on the Donbass and Kursk Oblast. Let's have a quick look at what has happened over the course of the last few days. Again, incredibly successful offensive operation by Russian forces in the Donbass. This salient near Kharkova is becoming increasingly small. And eventually you will see one unified front line running from, just to the northwest of Volodar all the way towards Pokrovsk. And that offensive operation by the Russians will continue in the northeast, just to the northwest of Belgorod, Kursk Oblast. Russian forces are massing for a final offensive operation to evict Ukrainian forces from Kursk, from the potato fields of Kursk. This is going to go down as a catastrophic military bumble by the Ukrainian military and the Ukrainian state. Stupid decision to move the amount of combat brigades to seize these potato fields and then watch those combat brigades slowly be degraded and destroyed over a period of weeks by the Russian Air Force and its artillery brigades. But that's what's happening. And yes, as Donald Trump takes office, he is inheriting something that is unprecedented in terms of foreign policy disasters. Not only that, he is inheriting a DEI woke higher command within the military that has set out to harm the United States, and more importantly, the United States military, with this ridiculous diversity, equity, and inclusion ideology. It is and has harmed the U.S. military in a way that I don't think people really understand at this point. It has shattered recruiting efforts. And it's very, very difficult once that ideology becomes entrenched to clean it out. It creates anti-merit decay that becomes very difficult to clean out. Hopefully, Donald Trump and the people that he places in these positions of power are able to remove this DEI threat within the U.S. military. And at the same time, he is facing this super alliance of the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China and other nation states that have been pushed together through the actions of this neoliberal deep state. So that does it for today. More to come. As always, thanks for joining us. Have a good day.